Rev up your engines! Well, today I'm going to talk about Suzuki cars, SUVs. What went wrong? Why don't they sell them anymore in the United States? Now, strange enough, Suzuki makes absolute screaming, dependable motorcycles. I got a 750, rev it like mad, doesn't break down. Their cars are just about exactly the opposite. One of their attempts to make an SUV, this particular one was made in Canada. It is an XL7. It's the biggest thing that Suzuki ever made. We call it a compact SUV, but it's the biggest thing Suzuki made. Suzuki was no good at making big things. They started in the United States in 1985, then they left in 2012. People didn't like them. The little Samurais, little Jeepy things, fun little toys for going around, but they had no power. They rode like washing machines. I had a customer with one, liked it driving around in Houston in the city, moved to Florida. He calls me up from Florida. He says, I'm selling this thing. This is useless on the highway, the worst riding machine I ever had. In the case of this SUV, it's pretty much falling apart. As we get in, the remote doesn't work anymore. So you gotta use the key. We get inside, but even it doesn't work very well. Finally, start her up. Power window doesn't work anymore. It's broken inside. Interesting enough, the AC still works. It's blowing cold, but the heat didn't work at all this winter. And even though it looks simple, turn the dial for heat. Well, that's just a computer system. It has no heat. He tried everything in my how to fix your heater thing, so it's got some kind of problem with the computer controls. Now, this particular one has a short that keeps shorting out the battery that nobody can figure out. Well, I'm going to make a whole video about that later. That'll be a separate video, but it shows you these things are not very well made. They were underpowered for the American market. People didn't like their styling. Their dealerships were staffed with mechanics who didn't know how to fix anything, and they didn't stock very many parts. When I used to work on them, I'd have to hunt around like mad to try to find parts for these stupid things. And under the hood is at least a V6 3.6 engine. Hey, at least they put a V6 engine in it. Realize the Suzukis were basically a cheaper line of cars. Okay, you get a cheaper line of cars, people are generally going to buy the cheapest one. They're going to buy the most expensive one, like these that have the bigger engines in them. A lot of it was marketing too. They just didn't market them very well. But as I said earlier, a lot of it had to do with their dealership. They didn't stock enough parts, so when they did break, you couldn't get parts. You'd be waiting for them. All they, unlike their high-tech motorcycles that go forever, headlights are foggy, relatively cheaply made. You can even hear it when you close the hood. Well, before we scan it, we'll take it for a spin. Hope it won't break down. Check it out. The blossoms are starting to come out here. And another lack of quality. You can't see what gear you're in. That part's broken too. 5-speed automatic transmission. And it does have 165,595 miles. So it's ran for a while. As we corner, it's rather top heavy. Not the greatest handling machine. And you can see the gas gauge is broken. He said that's been broken for a long time. The engine actually doesn't sound bad at all. I'll give them that. They do make great motorcycle engine, and this is a redesigned V6. Here we go. There's nobody behind us. And step on it. Hey! Doesn't sound bad. Not bad at all. But like I said, too little too late for the American market. Now, they sell the heck out of these things in Australia and different countries with the tiny engines, and not with automatic transmissions, but with manual transmissions, and they don't care that they're not all that fast. They like the gas mileage. You live someplace that's $8-10 a gallon for gas, you're not going to like a car that's big and eats up a lot of gasoline, like a Ford Explorer or, you know, a Range Rover. So there's a niche market for these things. But they pulled out of the United States 12 years ago, and I don't see any chance of them coming back anytime soon. Like this guy, you can get one of these things dirt cheap used. Buyer beware. You need parts for this thing, you're going to be scrounging all over the place. And let's say the engine or transmission goes out, nobody's going to fix those things on these. Not too shabby, actually. They didn't come out with this thing in the beginning instead of near the end of being sold in the United States, because it's not that bad when you consider it does have all this mileage on it. 165,597, and it's still running okay. Mind you, it's not big enough for Americans and probably not fast enough. They've got a very bad reputation for vehicles, Suzuki, and when you start making vehicles bad, even if you improve them like this one is somewhat, people have a bad taste in their mouth and they're not going to buy another one. Now they still sell Suzukis all over the world. Like when I went to the West Indies, geez, they had Suzukis everywhere. I rented one of their little Jeeps and it was fun to drive around. But consider the island was 25 miles long, 2 miles wide, and had a speed limit of 25 miles an hour. Now, if you don't care about things like the power windows don't work, the gas gauge doesn't work, you can't tell what gear you're in, it doesn't run all that bad, you know? But it just shows the overall quality of these things is crap. You know, they weren't put together all that well. They weren't designed all that well. The only thing positive I really have to say about this vehicle is the drivetrain. That redesigned, larger V6, 5-speed automatic transmission. Hey, it's still running pretty good with 165,000 miles on it, and neither of them have been touched. Yeah, if it sits for a few days, it does go dry. No power, you got to jump start it, so there's a short, which I'm going to check out in another video. But if you're the kind of person who wants everything to work and are a stickler about it, don't even think about buying one of these. You probably won't be able to find parts for half of the stuff that's broken. But here's the weird thing. Suzuki is still one of the largest automakers in the world in other countries. Japan, especially India, Australia, they sell them all over the place. A lot of places where gasoline is expensive. I gotta say, this redesigned V6 impressed me. It reminds me of my motorcycle. It's got a lot of guts to it, right? But it didn't fit in the American market, and their smaller cars with 4-cylinder engines with automatic transmissions barely got out of their own way, and Americans ran away from them in droves, so they left the country in 2012. They also left Canada. Now, just for giggles, I'm gonna hook up my fancy scan tool, see how many codes this thing has. It might be jaw-dropping, I don't know. This Maxi system will find everything. It read it. Suzuki. Now, it's taking forever to decode the VIN, so while it's doing that, we'll look around. They do have these funky arm grabs there. I've never seen ones like that before. You know, fancy sunroof. And the leather seats have a few cracks, but they're not in that bad shape. It's a reasonable amount of room in the back. And it's the US XL7 2007 3.6 gas. Topology scan, so here we go. And as you can see, old Scotty isn't just whistling Dixie. The ECM has 49 codes. The TCM for the transmission has 40 codes. The BCM has 2. EBCM has 2. Airbag has 4. HVAC has 2. Well, it's 73% done, has over 104 codes. And now it's done, and it has 105 codes. Okay, this Suzuki now set the records for most codes in a car I've ever checked out. I've never had one with 105 codes before. Like I say, these things were made pretty crappy, and Americans just didn't accept them. For giggles, we'll take the biggest one, the powertrain that has 49 codes. We'll take a look at some of them. App system, anti-pollution, throttle position not known, engine coolant, catalyst inefficiency, throttle sensor high voltage, oxygen sensor slow, system 2 rich off idle. Hey, we're talking about all kinds of codes, right? I guess when I said a beater car, I meant a beater car. Now, hey, it doesn't run all that bad, other than it drains power when it's sitting. And this is a Tennessee car. There are no emissions testing, but to get this thing to pass emissions would probably cost many thousands of dollars to figure out what the heck is going wrong. But in this case, it's Tennessee. You don't care. It does not run bad. You saw it take off and go. It idles fine. It's idling right now. It idles fine, right? But all those codes, if you live in an area where you get your car inspected every year, don't even think about buying one like this. You put in a scan tool and it goes like that. The only thing you could use it for, say in New York State, would be you got yourself some land in the country, just drive it on the country and don't put it on the road, because you'd never be able to register it legally. Now, just for giggles, let's look at the transmission codes just to see how they are. Here we go. Transmission code, switch not learn, incorrect gear ratio, incorrect reverse. Look at transmission torque request, throttle session. Look at this thing, incorrect gear ratio, a whole bunch of them. Now the odd thing is it shifts like a dream, so I'm assuming, now this guy bought this thing used with no knowledge of what the heck happened before. I'm assuming it's got a used transmission, because when you get all those incorrect gear ratios, that usually means the transmission's broken inside. So somebody probably replaced it with a used unit And a fancy machine like my hotel, they didn't know how to turn these codes off, so they didn't turn them off. But be that as it may, all those codes, hey, not something you'd really want to buy unless, like I say, it's a beater car. So there you have it. Some of the reasons that Suzuki failed in the United States, including 105 trouble codes on one vehicle. A new record, right? So, hey, you want a little beater car if you get them dirt cheap and they don't inspect cars where you live? Maybe get a beater one, have a little bit of fun with it. But as regular transportation in a state or an area that does emissions testing, you might as well as dig the pit and start throwing your money in if you buy one of these. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.